All right, so welcome to the deep dive where we take your suggestions and really try to go deep into
Absolutely.
some really interesting material. And today's suggestion comes to us from a listener who is really interested in Jonathan Kaye
Oh, yeah.
and his book En route to the Sunrise Saloon. And specifically, they wanted to really look closely at the chapter called Odd Jobs, which covers 1971 to 1977.
Interesting period.
And their real question is kind of like, what were these early experiences that really shaped the author's character,
Right.
particularly his views on work, his desire for independence, how he navigates family, how he pursues what he wants in life?
Yeah, those formative years, right.
Yeah,
That's a great question.
really formative.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of go through this chronologically,
Okay, sounds good.
and let's jump right in. So first of all, what set Jonathan on this whole path of even needing to make money as a young teenager?
Right.
It wasn't just like he wanted some extra cash to, buy baseball cards or whatever.
Yeah.
He really describes two key events in the chapter. One is his father, who he kind of portrays as being like constantly busy, dismissive, too busy to talk,
Right.
which as a kid, you can imagine feeling kind of isolated and, not really heard.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The other big thing that he mentions is a physical fight that he got into in front of friends.
Okay.
And so it seems like these two events together
Yeah.
were a catalyst to push him towards wanting a job, wanting to make his own money.
Yeah, like a real need for self-reliance and, not just a little bit of side cash, but really needing to
Yeah,
feel a sense of agency in his own life.
exactly.
Um,
And so then the very first job that he gets, I mean, this is amazing. At 13 years old, he gets a job
wow.
as an assistant to the tennis pro at a golf club,
Okay.
4 miles from his home. And the fact that he did that at 13
Yeah.
without his parents even knowing is pretty
Yes, absolutely.
amazing. What do you think fueled that kind of initiative at such a young age?
Where it seems like that, that feeling of being unheard or the embarrassment of the fight, it could have created this need to forge his own path.
Yeah.
And kind of take risks and put himself out there. Right?
Okay.
I mean, that's quite young to just go out and get a job like that.
And the job itself sounds kind of interesting.
Okay.
The tennis pro, it turns out, enjoyed his Lowenbrow a little too much.
Oh,
And so Jonathan ended up actually teaching most of the tennis lessons
wow.
to the country club housewives.
That's amazing. That must have been quite a dynamic for a young kid.
Can you imagine? Yeah, and he was making good money. I mean, $76.81 a week.
Wow, at 13.
But here's the thing. He didn't spend any of it.
Really?
Not a penny. He saved every dollar.
Hmm.
What do you think was going on there?
Well, I think maybe this goes back to this idea that money wasn't just for spending for him, but like a tool, right? For some
Mhm.
sort of freedom in the
Yeah.
future. And maybe seeing his dad always too busy, gave him this feeling like,
Yeah.
I need to be self-sufficient and not really rely on anybody else.
Yeah, and so he was working at this tennis club for 3 summers. So by the time he is 16 and a half, he's got his driver's license.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
And you know how it is. You get your license, you're thinking about
Yeah.
freedom, you're thinking about
Yeah.
cars.
Cars.
And there's this car, a 1969 Firebird convertible,
Nice.
that he just really had his eye on. He describes it as sleek, sexy, the car.
Just like the ultimate freedom car.
Exactly. And so this car cost $1,200. And, he's been working, he's saved up all this money.
Yeah.
But this is where his grandfather enters the picture.
Okay.
Ben is his name. And he's a really interesting character, very different from the father.
Okay.
He's described as patient, smart, hardworking, organized, kind, a real planner.
Right.
And we even find out that he helped his own daughter, Jonathan's mother, with her housing situation. So he's really like a solid
Linker.
anchor. Yeah. And Ben knows that Jonathan has been eyeing this Firebird,
Right.
but he also knows Jonathan, right?
Yeah.
And so he says, well, I see what kind of kid you are. You're hardworking, you're ambitious. Right. But he kind of cautions him against the Firebird.
Okay.
And instead, he suggests a more practical option.
What's that?
A 1970 Plymouth Duster
Okay.
with a slant 6 engine, which I guess is a very reliable
Like a workhorse engine.
workhorse, yeah. And it's only $800.
Okay.
And so here's Jonathan. He's got his heart set on this, really cool car.
Yeah.
But his grandfather is giving him this advice.
Right.
And he ultimately decides to go with the Duster.
You have a practical option. Why?
He does. And it's a really interesting moment, I think, because it shows that he's starting to understand
Yeah.
that, true freedom isn't always about the
Right.
flashiest, most
It's
exciting.
not always glamorous.
Yeah, and he even says, freedom had a new name, and it was a Plymouth.
That's a great line.
I love that line.
Yeah, it really captures that shift in his thinking.
Yeah, so he's got the duster, he's driving around, but the car adventures don't stop there.
Oh, really?
So while his parents are away on vacation,
Okay.
he decides to buy a 1967 Mustang for $300.
And, his dad finds out.
Yeah, what does he think about that?
And he's like, what the hell were you thinking?
Yeah, I bet.
But Jonathan says, no, I'm going to fix it up. I'm going to sell it.
Okay.
And amazingly, within 3 weeks, he sells it for $575.
So he made a profit?
$200 profit.
Wow.
And then the father's reaction completely changes.
Oh, really?
He's like, oh, you're a budding entrepreneur.
Wow, so it's like...
It's a complete 180.
It's all about success then, right?
It is, yeah. It's very interesting.
Wow.
So then, after that, his father actually has an idea for him.
Okay.
He sees other kids in the neighborhood waxing cars.
Right.
And he says, Jonathan, why don't you give that a try?
Okay.
And so Jonathan starts going to the AAA grocery store parking lot
Right.
and literally approaching housewives and being like, hey, can I wax your car?
Wow, he's got guts.
He does. And he was making like $100 a day
Wow, that's pretty good.
after expenses.
Yeah, good for him.
So this is all happening before he even goes to college. Right.
And in high school, he was a B student, which is fine, decent.
Yeah.
But he openly admits that he got a really bad score on the SATs. But he ends up getting into Denison University.
Okay.
And the reason, they say, is because of his extracurricular activities and this entrepreneurial flair.
So they're not just looking at grades and scores.
Not just, no.
That's interesting.
And so he goes to Denison, joins a fraternity, Sigma Chi.
Okay.
Initially, it's great. He's excited. He's making friends.
Right.
But then things take a turn because he starts to experience anti-Semitism.
Oh, wow.
And he's really kind of blindsided by it.
Yeah, I bet that's a
And, it's a...
tough reality to face.
Yeah, and it kind of makes him rethink things. And the only good thing that comes out of it, he says, is his friendship with a guy named Tim,
Okay.
who kind of sticks by him during that whole thing.
That's good. At least he had someone there for him.
It did, yeah. And so he's in college, but his relationship with his father is still strained. He talks about these Sunday night phone calls.
Yeah.
Which he really dreaded. He said there was always just this underlying anger.
Oh.
And so you can tell that dynamic is still
Like it's unresolved, right?
unresolved, yeah.
Interesting.
He also mentions that he has ADD, which was undiagnosed at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And it made reading really difficult for him. He describes it as trying to catch water with a net.
Oh, wow. I can imagine.
And so how did he get through college?
Yeah. How did he manage?
Well, he said he never missed a single class.
Really?
And he took meticulous notes. So
Wow.
he developed these strategies to kind of cope and get through it.
That shows real resilience.
Yeah, it does.
And, resourcefulness.
To figure out a way. And socially, he talks about college being kind of a blur of parties and chasing girls.
Yeah.
But he says it wasn't as fulfilling as he'd hoped.
Hmm.
And so then this brings us to what he calls his Caribbean adventure.
All right. This sounds interesting.
So over Christmas break of his freshman year, he impulsively buys a ticket to St. Thomas.
Okay.
And he's looking for an adventure. And he finds this 73-foot yawl.
What's a yawl?
It's a sailboat. It's called the Zora.
Okay.
And he literally walks down to the dock, approaches the boat, and gets hired as a crew member.
He didn't even meet the captain first or anything.
Nope.
Wow. That's very in character, it seems.
It is, yeah. He's offered $70 a week for a month.
Okay.
And he says yes.
All right. So what's this captain like?
Well, he describes him as a grumpy old grizzly son of a bitch.
Wow.
And apparently he was pretty lecherous as well.
All right.
So he's working on this boat. He has to wake up super early every day,
Yeah.
wipe everything down, set up meals, sail the boat, clean the boat, constantly working.
That's a lot.
And then he witnesses the captain groping a guest's wife.
Wow.
And then, to make matters worse, the captain charges the husband for a T-shirt.
Oh, my gosh.
And then, at the end of the trip, neither Jonathan nor his fellow crewmate Ricky got any of the tips that the guests had left.
Wow. So this wasn't really the Caribbean dream he was expecting.
Not at all.
But he does say he learned some valuable lessons from this, right?
He does.
What do you think those might have been?
Well, I think maybe that sometimes,
Yeah.
he needs to be a little bit more careful about
Yeah.
who he trusts and
Right.
the situations he puts himself in.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like he learned the hard way.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then he comes back from this trip
Yeah.
And he finds out that his grandfather Ben has passed away suddenly,
Oh.
and he died at his kitchen sink.
Oh, wow.
And you can really feel, as you're reading this, how much Jonathan admired his grandfather. He
Yeah.
said, I hope someday I can be half the man he was.
Yeah. That's a powerful statement.
And he also says, I still miss him.
Yeah. You can really tell that he was a big influence on his life.
Huge. So, wow, we've really gone through a lot here.
Yeah, we have.
What are some of the key takeaways from you?
Well, I think it's so interesting to see these early experiences, these odd jobs, shape his views on work, like the strong work ethic and financial responsibility,
Yeah.
and also just his drive, his initiative to create his own opportunities, whether that's through these kind of entrepreneurial things or even just getting that first job, on his own.
Yeah.
It's really impressive.
Yeah.
And that dynamic with the father is so interesting too.
Absolutely.
And the grandfather being this like real anchor for him
Yeah.
provides this contrast, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if, Jonathan was even aware of that at the time.
And it's amazing how even these negative experiences,
Right.
like that really horrible trip on the Zora,
Yeah.
still he was able to learn something from them.
Yeah, like a valuable lesson.
Yeah.
And that's kind of inspiring in a way,
It is.
that he could take even these negative experiences and grow from them.
Yeah. And for all of you listening, I hope that this deep dive has kind of helped you think about, your own early experiences, maybe some of the jobs you had or some of the things that happened to you that really shaped who you are today.
Yeah, it makes you think, like, what were those small jobs or those unexpected events in your life
Yeah.
that might have really shaped your values or your work ethic?
Yeah.
Like maybe even without you even realizing it at the time.
Exactly. That's really something to think about.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.